We're going to start segments called Setting the Stage for the Tribulation. And this is going to involve things that we have talked about historically that we know are coming forward in the tribulation but aren't here yet. So basically, it's like I say, it's setting the stage for things to come. So for instance, the third Jewish temple. We've talked about it when it came to the Antichrist. We know it has to be in place. So what's being done to prepare the way? So as we stated, the Bible clearly states that this structure has to be built. Daniel referred to it when he says that the Antichrist comes in the middle of the tribulation and stops the sacrifices. Paul actually mentions it in 2 Thessalonians when he says the Antichrist comes in and claims himself to be God. And we haven't discussed it yet, but in Revelation, John actually goes and measures it. So this is an actual physical structure that is yet to be built. So let's look at the history. Because you'll hear a lot about 70 AD. So let's find out kind of where the temples fell historically. The first temple was built in 900 BC by King Solomon, and it was destroyed by King Nebuchadnezzar in 586 BC. The second temple was built by King Cyrus, or was decreed by King Cyrus. It was begun, I believe, around 538 BC, but completed in 515 BC. Now, just so you'll know also, there was some extensions of that second temple by King Herod, but the actual building of the temple was in 515, or completion of that second temple was in 515 BC. And then you've got 70 AD, when it was actually destroyed by the Romans. Now, something to remember is not only was the temple destroyed, but Jerusalem was destroyed. And the Jews were forced to disperse among the nations. So they no longer had a place to call their home. So 70 AD is a big date for the Jews. So we've got our first temple and our second temple. Let's talk about our third temple. We know it has to be built at the beginning or sometime around the beginning of the tribulation because it has to be in place for the middle of the tribulation, which is 3.5 years from the beginning when the Antichrist steps in. So let's talk about that third temple. There's some obstacles concerning building this, or else it would have already been built. First is the attitude of the Jewish people. Overall, Jews are very secular except for the ultra-Orthodox Jews. They're very secular people, and they know that if they push for this third temple to be built, there's going to be war with the Muslims. So a lot of them just kind of want to just roll with it, and you kind of can't blame them on that. Currently, they don't have full rights, and that's where the whole war thing comes in. There are two structures currently in place, the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which are currently in place on the Temple Mount. There has been discussion on if the temple is to be rebuilt. Would it be built on top of these? Would these be taken down? Would it be built to the side? Not for us to determine, but a lot of discussion has gone on concerning that. So that's here nor there. The other thing I just want to comment on is on the left-hand side, you'll see the Western Wall. This is remains of the retaining wall that surrounded the Temple Mount from the first and the second temples. So this is very holy to the Jews. You saw President Trump go there and stick a little prayer in there. They stick prayers within the creases of the wall, and this is just considered a very holy site for them. So our obstacles, we've covered those. But we're continually seeing things in these prophetic days when prophecy, as we like to say, is popping off the page. But we're seeing things come to life. So back in March, which was 1 month ago, it was pretty exciting. Someone very up high in the Saudi Arabia line did a couple of tweets basically saying the Jews need to have the Temple Mount. We don't need it. That's not our holy site. Give it to the Jews. So we're already seeing little breaks within the chain that are starting to release that Temple Mount. And we're going to see more and more of it. A lot of people think that the actual agreement or the release to have it built there will come at the beginning of tribulation when the Antichrist signs that peace agreement. They believe that within that peace agreement will be the rights to build that Temple Mount, to build that temple on the Temple Mount. We don't know, but again, we're seeing the stage set for things like that to happen. Let's talk about the Temple Institute. They play a huge role in this. They're about over 30 year old organization, and they have dedicated everything they do to the actual building of the temple and all of the vessels that go within it. And you'll see to the level of detail these people have gone to, it's absolutely amazing, and only God could allow for it. Okay, so if they were given the rights to the Temple Mount, what they plan to do is set up a tent-like temple. This is an example of what Moses did when they were in the desert, and they would replicate this. It would be called Tabernacle of Moses. And then once they actually were ready, could build, actually started, they would build around this structure. So in other words, they want to go ahead and immediately start sacrificing and start the whole rituals within the temple. So they would set this up and then build on top of it. And then we're going to also talk about all the vessels and things to go within it. So the plans for the actual temple structure, and I'll just read this to you. This is from their the director of the Temple Institute. Over the last 3 decades, the Temple Institute has done everything in our power to research and prepare for the third temple. As world Jewry sits on the ground mourning the first 2 temples, we have taken a huge leap towards the rebuilding by releasing a 3D architectural rendition of the third temple. And this was in 2015. So I'm going to play, it's about a 3-minute video, just so you can see actually what the temple would look like.
I've been using the WW app for a few months and I'm 20 pounds lighter already. Let me show you how. It's pretty simple.
Here we go. That can completely be built. So they are ready to go. There's really no delay for them. They're just waiting for the A-OK to for the rights to the Temple Mount. So there you go. On to the next, the temple vessels. This is numerous temple vessels. They are ready to the very nth degree. Each one of these has some sort of Bible verse or terminology or anything, description, details given for it to specifically how to make it, build it, create it. And we'll go through just a couple of these, but some of the other ones that we're going to get into are, it's just amazing. So anyways, the first one is the golden menorah. This represented the divine presence of God and the children of Israel. Also know that each one of those represents one of the feasts. So the Jews have 7 feasts that they celebrate, and we'll talk about that in another section. It is the first sacred vessel that they recreated since the Second Temple was destroyed in AD 70, and it stands right outside the old Jewish quarter. It took 10 years of research on how to recreate it. It is made of 24 karat gold, and think of 24 karat gold as being very, very soft. So they had to do a lot of research on how to recreate this with the durability to be able to stand on its own. So that's where you get the 10 years research. It weighs 400 pounds, and it is valued at $3 million. Now, it burns olive oil. And interestingly enough, they are now producing the first pure olive oil has been made there. It's taken in 2,000 years. So they have to, it says it was made with an extremely complex process due to the necessity of keeping it pure according to Jewish law. For instance, no fertilizer can be used in the growing of olives. The olives, when they're harvested, the oil is pressed the same day. So it's very, very strict according to how they make it. But now they've got their oil ready. The next thing is the harps. The harps is really interesting. I think it's all interesting. So the harps is really interesting too. I think it's amazing. They need 4,000 harps for this temple. That's a lot of harps. But they actually brought back this family. The family is called the Hararis. I'm not real sure how to say it. They are an American hippie family, and they are not kidding. They're literally hippies. But he is a Levite, which means his ancestry comes directly from the tribe of Levi. So he is coming from America back to Jerusalem. They did about 30 years ago. He is coming directly back to where his roots are. But they are actually creating the harps that replicate exactly how they were made back in, I believe it was King David's time. So this family is making all the harps to go within the temple. So again, down to the minute detail. We're not going to go through this in a lot of detail, but they are also creating all the garments. So you got the garments for the high priest. And the one thing I just, personally, I'm creative. I love to be creative, and I thought this was pretty cool. Verse 3, it says, "So you shall speak to all who are gifted artisans." And I just think that's a reminder sometimes for those that like art, and maybe we're not real artists, but we're crafty, that's a gift, that God has given that to us as a gift. But God goes into great detail on how each one of these garments are to be made. This is talking about the actual breastplate, as you can see from this picture. And I think it's pretty cool how much detail they go into. It's called the breastplate of judgment. And you can tell from the coloring of it, it's made of gold, blue, purple, and scarlet thread. It has 12 stones within it, each one representing one of the 12 tribes. So again, every single thing is broken out in such minute detail. And concerning this breastplate, it goes all the way through verse 30. I just had room through 22. So just a lot of information. God looks at every single detail concerning this. So for the temple priests, there's also garments. I didn't want to get into that, but there is actually created an academy. It's an online school to teach them the traditions and the rituals the Jewish priests do. But what I found really interesting is it says over 98% of Jewish men who identify as a temple priest, back in their heritage, they identify as one. They actually have a specific genetic marker. So when they check their DNA, there is a specific marker within their DNA. So again, God doesn't forget any detail, and I just found that pretty amazing. All right, on to the red heifer. This is a big one you'll hear a lot of talk about if you follow anything with the Jews or Israel. It is required that there be a red heifer without blemish for the actual opening of the temple. It is considered I'll just get through this real quick. It is considered as a sacrificial animal. They sacrifice it initially right at the beginning. And then as you can see in the last verse, verse 4, it says, the priest shall take some of its blood in its finger and sprinkle the blood 7 times directly in front of the tabernacle of meeting. But they also burn it, and then they use the ashes as an actual ritual for cleaning. Now, when we talk about a perfect red heifer, I did not realize, but you can see the guy with the magnifying glass. We're talking perfect. We're talking if it has 2 white, 1 white hair, a white hair, it is not considered a red heifer. It's not a perfect red heifer. It has to be perfect. So about a year ago, they had 2, and they thought that was it. And come to find out that those hairs did not turn. So last update was in March. They have 2 now. They have a couple of red hairs, but they are, as they would say, 99.9% sure that they're going to turn, and so that they would have their red heifer. So this is a big deal. There has not been one. They're actually raising their own in Israel for the first time in 2,000 years. So the fact that the red heifer is almost ready is a huge deal for them. Again, this is every little detail. The temple wine. Now, I'll read you a little bit of information on these guys. These are pretty interesting, too. There is a winery, and it is actually in Israel. And they have, what they can do is they can actually look at the DNA of a grape seed. And so they've gone back and they have found grape seeds back in the timing of, I believe they said it was Solomon's temple. Their winery is located right near Shiloh. While in recent digs, they uncovered 60 burnt barrels with grape seeds at the bottom. They were used to test these seeds, which dated back to the exact date that it says in the book of Judges that the tabernacle was destroyed. Because of the historic emphasis on the wine, all the labels are named after fortresses in Israel. So again, they're able to get back to the exact wine that they used at those times, which is amazing. Other thing I wanted to comment on, and I think this is neat, something I've learned along the way, and I think it's neat that they do it because God blesses it. God commands his people to use their land. So if you're a farmer, he commands you can use your land for 6 years, and then on the 7th year you leave it. You don't touch it, you don't plant it, you don't do anything to it. You just leave it. And then you come back, and it gives the time for the land to renew. And that's what they do, which I think is pretty cool, and how God has continually blessed that for them because they have done very, very well. They say any contest they have ever entered, they have won. So God has blessed their hands and has blessed their faithfulness to doing what he's told them to do. So they are able to get down to the almost the exact wine that they used in the temple days, which is absolutely amazing. This is another one. This is temple bread. It's called showbread. And the Talmud, which is just oral tradition, states that these loaves miraculously stayed fresh for an entire week. I've heard it's for anywhere from an entire week to 9 days, almost to the point they're actually warm, which is pretty neat. Now, a gentleman who actually used to be I believe he was some sort of engineer, but had a hobby of baking bread, started baking bread, and they actually started selling it, and then he got more interested in this and the learning of it. And apparently it's a very, very, very complicated process to make this bread, but he has almost got it down to the science. And apparently he does videos on YouTube concerning it. But they are now able to make the original bread that was put within the temple and fed a ton of people. So again, down to the very minute detail, God has not left out anything. And last but not least, the half shekel. So in the Bible, it actually says that the half shekel shall be an offering to the Lord. And they have now created the half shekel. So we now have a half shekel that can be used as a donation to the temple. So let's do a quick summary. Basically, the feelings towards the Jews building on their temple on the Temple Mount is softening. And like I said, it's assumed that probably within that 7-year peace agreement with the Antichrist that he will allow it. But again, things need to be softened up before that can happen. They're ready to build it with a temporary structure, and also they're really ready to build that permanent structure within 3 to 6 months. All of the vessels are prepared down to the DNA of the priest, the DNA of the wine, the bread, the olive oil, every single thing. There's so much more that I didn't even touch on, but everything to the very smallest detail is ready. So basically, as I can't even remember who I listened to, but his favorite saying is sitting on G, waiting on O. They're ready. They're ready to go. So again, this temple needs to be built for the middle of the tribulation to happen, which is 3.5 years from the beginning. And things are setting. The stage is being set for that to happen. So it's pretty exciting stuff. As I find out more information and things, I will do quick little videos just to give you an update on the third temple. But the Antichrist could come any day because they're ready to build that temple. So let's just remember that. Thanks, guys. Bye.